Okay, hello guys. So this is our first topic for our AGCC 2113. I don't know if I can still remember it right. But basically, this is methods of agricultural research. Okay, initially we will try to look into the nature of science, no, and research, and then try to see what are the differences between science and research and the similarities between the two. Sa akin mong sometimes we kumbaga misconstrue, we use one thing for the other usahay. So before anything else, before the complicated stuff of research, ilailahon sa nato, we go back to science, how science is defined, and what is research. Okay, okay. Science kuno is a method of inquiry, and at the same time, it's the results of the inquiry. Unsa man na, ang process to answer questions or the process of discovering something, like say for example, you look into a butterfly and then you try to observe na before it turned into a butterfly, moagi siya sa different phases ba na, if I'm not wrong, no, kanang iyang metamorphosis, and then you try to take note of that, so you're trying to explain the development. That's a method of inquiry. You're observing. Ang process itself is already science, and then the result nga moingon ka nga, kanang eureka moment nimo nga you will say nga, ah ang butterfly di ay follows the katong complete metamorphosis ingana, and so on. So both the method, okay, the method of inquiry and the results of the inquiry is actually science itself. Ayaw glabda inyong ulo. Okay, a very old definition of science is kanisya that you can see: objective, accurate, systematic analysis of a determinate body of empirical data in order to discover recurring relationships among phenomena. 1977 pagani na. Okay, objective meaning free from partiality. Dili ba ingon nga walay bias. O unsa nakita nimo when you see it's green, then it has to be green. Dili ka ingon nga uy may pagka yellow man iyang green. Ang usahay ko aning ana, it's objective, it's accurate, an accurate description of what is being observed. Systematic analysis, it's a process. Okay, then analyze nimo, then determinate body of empirical data. So meaning mura ba we already know kung sa paingnan, no, and then to discover recurring relationships among phenomena, unsa mga panghitabo, unsa ang mga recurring relationships, unsa man siya, example kana kaning mga predicted na kayo, like for example we throw a stone above, we labay na to ng bato, by virtue of gravity it will fall back to the ground, di ba? So that's a recurring nga phenomenon, and we know nga by virtue of gravity mubalik yun na siya, and then it's explained. So that's science. Then what are the aims of science? I'll just show it everything. This is an old presentation. Yeah, samo kayo na pay si tawagan ni kaning animation. Unsa may tumong ug tuyo. Okay, going back. Science is one, the method of inquiry. Two, it's the results of the inquiry itself. Ngano mag-inquire man ta because we intend to describe, explain, and predict. Mao na siya ang aims of science. To describe something, what happened. Katong perfect example na ko earlier when I talked about katong metamorphosis of butterfly. So we were trying to describe there, and then another would be an explanation. Katong a bato, you throw it up and it goes back down. It can be explained by virtue of the theory of gravity, and then prediction, like mayon ka katong explanation partly, and then mayon pagyud ka nga ako ning ilabay pa ibabaw pilay pusta ako sa muhulog raning balik, di ba? So that's predicting something. Okay, and then apasumpay din na, we're talking about theory daw is a set of interrelated constructs, definitions, and propositions that present a systematic view of phenomena by specifying relations among variables with the purpose of explaining and predicting phenomena. So eventually, kining ato ang process of inquiry to describe, to explain something, and to predict something, adto na siya, kumbaga ang lintunganay is a theory. It's an explanation of why something exists, why something happens. Unsa man ang theory, I don't know if you tried watching the YouTube link I sent you 2 or 3 days ago, nga unsay kalahian sa theory, sa hypothesis, sa law. So naa dito. So basically, perfect example of a theory, ang Einstein's theory of relativity. So far, up to this time, it remains to be a theory, no? Dili siya theory nga murag mugna-mugna, but it's something like a law na pod, no? About tahon. Encompassing siya, it's very broad. And then so far, they haven't seen any or documented any observation nga sukwahi sa theory. So until now, it stands as it is. So by nature, ang science pod ko, no, it's actually dili permanent. So by nature, lalisunon yun siya until such time nga there is a better explanation of something, then mao na pud na siya dawaton. So I'm not sure if you are familiar with kaning sa relihiyon pa sa una, remember katong heliocentric model of the universe o katong heliocentric meaning ang center na ang Earth, and then before ang katong geocentric ang Earth ang center sa solar system, that's the geocentric, and then the heliocentric is ang katong sun is the center of the universe pa sa una. In fact, Galileo died because of that, defending something in front of the church. So going back, ang istorya ni it's actually I may interchange this one kay dugay na nina ko nagian, wala po ko review this time, my bad. Kang Ptolemy o kang Copernicus, ingon si Copernicus, I'm not sure, I think Ptolemy came first. Ingon si Ptolemy nga the earth, by observing the stars and the sun, ingon si Ptolemy nga the center of the universe is the earth and everything revolves around the earth. Then later on, pila ka tuig ng labay, si Copernicus na po ingon, so the church believed nga the earth is the center of the universe. Later on, here comes Copernicus, ingon si Copernicus nga Ptolemy's observation or law is wrong. It's actually the sun that's the center of the universe. Universe pa ha kay sa una, later naman na nato na nasabtan nga ang universe is dako kaayo, unlike sa solar system. They just called it the universe sa una. Yung siya nga, it's instead of the earth being the center of the universe, it's actually the sun. And then in fact he was killed. He tries sa church just like Galileo because of that. So again, the nature of science is actually it's rigorous, yes, but it's not permanent. It's actually fluid in a way, because after some time, if there is a better explanation of something, then kana siya ang accepted. Usahay ikamatay pa sa usa ka tawo, no? Normally, the different processes, mga scientific process itong isgutan, mo unfold siya by virtue of the scientific process and by virtue of research. Mo itong isgutan, adto ko pa na padong istorya ha. So science deals with, okay, wait ha, if I may. See there. Science, unsa may gibuhat sa science? Generalizations kana, controlled investigation, prediction, causality, naturalism, determinism. It's different from the arts, because normally when we talk about the arts, we appreciate something regardless of giun sa na pagtrabaho. A painting, for example, or a novel or a story. Sometimes it may be nice for one observer or a person, yung pagani sila, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, pero for others it may not be. Science on the other hand is kumbaga, we're trying, di ba, kaganihan ang isgutan na to nga, we're trying to explain things. So we talk about generalizations, like we can categorize things, we can generalize nga, say for example, tanan butang nga mulihok, mutubo, and can reproduce, we can call them living things. Pwede. Unya na may uban nga dili mo lihok and mutubo nya. Dili man siya amo reproduce man pod. Pwede siguro na tanom lang na sila, tanom. Yeah, the others katong mulihok, animals na sila. See? Pero both tanoms and animals are living things. So, natay generalization, we generalize, we categorize observations into one. So, controlled investigation, diri in particular musod ang ato ang research. And then say magconduct og experiment, for example, and then we control all the variables. Variables is kana siyang usa ka aspect gani nga pwede nimo daghan magong klase sa variables. Na variables nga variable nga kalimot na independent, na ay dependent nga variable, na po extraneous variables. For example, para it's easy to understand, i-relate na to sa, say for example, you are doing a feeding trial on free range chicken na kay usa ka group of chickens nga imong gipakaon og feed type 1, napoy lain nga group nga chicken nga gipakaon nimo og feed type 2, napoy lain nga group of chickens nga imong gipakaon og feed type 3. Ang feed type is actually a variable. That's an independent variable. It's you being the researcher is controlling that. Ikay magbuot kung saan feeds mo ipakaon. Then you want to see the results of the type of feeds being fed to that group of chickens. So say for example, you want to check o paspas ba ilang tubo, say like you weigh them every week for example, or every day, and then ang ilang timbang, or we call it weight gain for example, weekly weight gain for example, is another variable, pero that one is the dependent variable on the other variable nga imong gina-control or katong feeds and classes of feeds. So generally sa agriculture nga field, we are doing this, no? So we set some variables fixed, we set other variables as kitay magbuto unsa, these are the independent variables, and then measure other variables, no? Tanaw na to kung sa iyang effect dito. The extraneous variables are those nga we cannot control. Say for example nga during sa imong growing period sa imong manok giulan, perting pildihan na nato lagi tay mahimo nagkalapok ug maayo gipang sipon, those are extraneous variables, meaning you cannot control those. But basically ang ato ang study or ang ato ang experiment involves around the growth or the response of your manok to a different feed being given. So it's a controlled investigation. Prediction, we want to predict something. So going back atong batong example nako, basically gravity ra to siya. You throw it up, you expect it to go back down. So that's prediction. So science deals with that. Then causality, unsa may hinungdan? Going back sa bato again. Perfect example ang bato. What made it go back down? May ka ang hinungdan adto, ang iyang cause is gravity. Okay? Causality. The naturalism, we try to explain the things nga that are occurring naturally. Like unsa man mga dugdug, kilat, why water flows downwards, the colors of the sky. Do you even know in the first place nga nung the sky is blue? Okay? Sunod na kita answeri ko ninyo ha unsay reason why the sky is blue. There is a reason for that. Okay? Determinism, meaning pwede na to i-predict o asa siya paingon o unsay expectation nga mahitabo sa usa ka butang o usa ka panghitabo usa ka phenomena. Okay? Then we talk about scientific method. Am I going too fast? Hopefully not. Okay, first is you identify the problem. I'll just show everything now. Okay. Sometimes other teachers or other authors consider 6 steps, others would consider 7 steps. But basically, maora gid ni siya. No, first is natay na obserbahan, then we ask a question, then you form a hypothesis, then conduct an experiment to test kung sakto ba na siya or dili. So, a perfect example that I can always remember up to now, pila na tigulang na si Sir 43 na ko this time. And I was still in high school, first year high school. One of our books, nakalimot ko sa exact book na mo. But, ang perfect example niya sa scientific method na ni was, kanang nasamad ko no si, hindi ko sure, si Pedro ba to? Ano na to Pedro? Nasamad siya, o niya, itambalan sa iyang lulo o kamunggay or makahiya. Pero the problem with kamunggay or makahiya, inigbutang dito sa iyahang samad, is dali kay siya matangtang. So, mo iyang observation. So, ingon siya nga, what if kung iyang usbon ang kamunggay nga mupilit ra siya sa samad, madili matangtang. So iyang hypothesis nga siguro mas daling maayo ang samad kung dili matangtang o dali ang kalamunggay or ang katong makahiya nga gibutang sa iyang samad. So what he did an experiment. He tried to boil it along with kanang wax ba sa kandila. So nahimo siyang murag ointment. And then tuod iyang gibutang, he did an experiment, iyang gibutang sa iyang samad, dili na dali matangtang, mura naman siya og ointment. So na-notice po niya after some time nga daling naayo iyang samad. So that's the perfect example of the scientific method at play, no? So there was an observation, a question was asked, and then a hypothesis was formed, and an experiment was done, and then after the experiment, you either reject or accept the hypothesis. So basically, you will be doing the same stuff. We may be conducting different studies, different topics, but the process is always the same. Sometimes it may be descriptive ato, but still ma-originate tuyo ka na to. We will follow the scientific method. Okay, research. Unsa man ning research? Okay, let me show everything first na. Unsa man ang research karon? Tanawa na ha unsay kalahian niya with science. Research daw is a careful, diligent, and exhaustive investigation of a specific matter, having as its aim the advancement of knowledge. Careful, diligent, and exhaustive investigation of a specific matter. So, unsa mang specific matter na to, ang example, katong feeding trial na to, for example, for free-range chicken. That's the specific matter. We want to know kung asang klase nga feeds nga itong gihatag is more effective on that particular type of chicken. Is it the feed A or feed B or feed C? Purpose na to is to advance knowledge because later on, instead of formulating feed A, B, and C, kapalot naghanon ta na ng A kay this is more effective or mas maayo siya sa atong mundo compared to feeds B and C, for example. Okay? So, that is research. O sa Bisaya pa, pang panuki-nuki. That scientific research and research can be scientific or not scientific. Kana magbasa ta og mga information about it. Research naman gyapon na pero dili siya scientific. Okay? If you have question, you can post questions by the way sa ato ang FB group ha. Types of research. Okay, tulo basically ang ato ang research. Fundamental or pure research, applied research, or action research. Fundamental or pure research, sometimes it's called basic research, is research just for the heck of it. Ug apoy pa istorya na. Mura pag wala lagi ingon nga tumong og tuyo nga exact. You just want to know unsa na siya. Applied research on the other hand is something that kanabang we already have a problem in mind that we want to solve. Okay? So for example, ini katulog nimo katol imong likod ngano katol ni akong likod basi akong banig ilisan ko na kaha na ko akong banig. That's applied research. You want to resolve the issue nga nangatol imong likod. Pure research on the other hand is or basic research is something you just want to know just for the heck of it. Now, for example, sukdo nimo ang temperature, although kabalo na ta magpabukal kag tubig unya sukdo nimo ang temperature yaman may ganun ka 100 degrees Celsius di ay inigbukal sa tubig sa may gamit na wala right now, di ba? You are just trying to answer that curiosity nga ingani di ay no ingani di ay ang temperature at which ang tubig will boil, no? Wala siya specific problem or need nga gi-address. You just want to know. So daghan po na siya pure research. It's also very interesting. Not a perfect example of pure research or basic research are kaning sa forestry nga nag-assess sa biodiversity sa mga bukid diri, for example sa Mount Lantoy. Itan-aw na to dito unsa nga mga tanom ang common nga what are the different animals that are there. Upon knowing those, it doesn't really mean something na tayo nakuha ka benefit, but actually gidugang na to siya sa existing pool of knowledge or sa science itself. Later on, we could use that information. Action research, on the other hand, ang third type, is a little bit different from the first two. Kini manggod, dili kaya ni siya structured nga research nga. Instead, mura siya og while doing something kuno you are gathering data. So kasagaran ng action researches are applied sa mga extension activities nga, say for example your number of enrollees ingana while gathering data sa enrollment. Later on you will learn nga 50% for example are males, the other 50% are females. You will later know nga say for example like 60% of students in City Argao are coming from Argao and 40% is coming from Dalaget, things like that, no? So on the course of doing something, do na kay na napupo ng mga pagtulunan nga nag-gather nimo. So that's action research. Okay? Types of research is to method. Okay. Historical research, mostly basa-basa lang ni kanin pwede rin ni mo ikaw trip nimo tong mga martial law paki kuan ka, paki Marcos ka or paki Aquinos ka, pwede na historical research. Karon kuno na ay trend nga they call it historical revisionism daw kay siya daw history was written by the victors, since the Marcoses lost during that time in the 1980s. Ang nagsulat ko, no, ang katong mga Aquino. So syempre ang dasbida ang mga Aquino. So you can do some research, historical. Pwede ka mag-scan of mga newspapers, for example, old publications, magazines, kung saan na-publish na nga time. In fact, kana mga topics on archaeology, kana mag-dig up sila og mga information ng mga daan is actually part of historical research. So, although it's more on bias towards something na mabasa sa archaeology, mga fossils pa to mainly, but they're trying to explain the lives of, say, animals and people during prehistoric times, no, than now. So getting a glimpse of what happened during that time. Descriptive research, on the other hand, is common kasagaran ipang buhat po din nato sa social research, wherein we field some questionnaires or interview schedule, and then based on the answers of the respondents to those questions in the questionnaire, maka-draw ta og conclusion nga, say for example, therefore nga mao day nagamit sila herbicide kay mas kapoy kuno og mangguna, mag-herbicide na lang silang tanan. So mga things like this. Experimental research is also very common for agriculture. No, katong akong perfect example kaganiha, talking about the different feeds nga ipakaon sa manok. That's basically an experiment. So that's experimental research. Either way, puhon ka mo when you will be doing your thesis. It's likely nga you will be doing an interview or an experiment. So kumbaga later on nga mga topics nga itong ipang hisgutan will focus more on that aspect, na dili na kay ta mag-touch sa katong action research o kining historical research, no. So dito na ato ang attempt to answer ng mga processes or steps nga itong pagabuhaton. Okay, what are different points worth noting? Okay, tara. Research employs the scientific method. It has 5 or 6 steps or 7, depende sa author, but basically the idea there is you observe something, di ba? Dapat yung hypothesis, dapat yung experiment, then you draw a conclusion, and so on. Kamu na bahala na, dito mo examine kung pila ka book to. Research is done to advance science. Okay, again, science is both the process, di ba? The process of inquiry, and at the same time, the collection of knowledge. Ang result of that inquiry, it's called science, ang duha. So, we are doing science to attain science. And it does sound weird, but it's basically it, no? So, to advance science, we need to do research. Research is a rigorous activity that borrows characteristics from science itself. Rigorous meaning, kumbaga walay lalis pa. Okay? Objective, it's accurate, it's systematic. You need to analyze. No, it's determinate and it's empirical. So, ang kurso ninyo at the start pa lang daan is Bachelor of Science man na siya. So, kumbaga, we are inclined towards the sciences at the start pa lang. Hindi na ito natawag ng BS, Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts in Agriculture, because it's not arts, it's sciences. And, again, just like research, we tend to be inclined towards being objective, being accurate, being systematic, being analytical, being determinate, and being empirical. I think that's pretty much it. Okay? Thank you very much. If you have questions, you can post these questions sa ato ang FB group, or you can comment on this post when I post this one later. Okay? Kita-kita tapuhon. Alright, bye-bye.